Stability. It's the promise we chase when we're tired, the fantasy we cling to when life feels too loud, a life that stays still, a rhythm that doesn't shake, a version of ourselves that never has to stretch again. But here's the truth. No one told you. Stability is a myth, because nothing in nature stays still. Not your body, not your mind, not your soul. You are either expanding or contracting, rising or sinking, awakening or numbing. What you've been calling staying in place is actually quiet decay, slow erosion dressed in routine, and most people don't notice it until the damage becomes existential, when energy becomes fog, when clarity becomes noise, when joy turns into obligation. Let's be blunt, you're not stuck. You're either building motion or being buried by inaction, and that lie of neutrality, that you can just pause your growth until you feel ready, is how most people sleepwalk into emptiness. Because life doesn't hold still for you. It moves, and you either move with it, or you get moved by it. I'm Ms. Time Distorter, and today, we end the illusion of emotional neutrality, the trance that calls itself balance, but feels like slow suffocation. Let's tear it open, and choose motion. Your brain is not wired for growth, it's wired for survival, and survival worships predictability. That's why stability feels so seductive, even when it's suffocating. Because your nervous system equates the familiar with safe, even if the familiar is quietly killing your spark. What you call balance might actually be dopamine starvation. When there's no novelty, no stretch, no edge, your reward system begins to power down. The brain stops sending signals of excitement. Curiosity dulls, drive fades, and over time you start to feel nothing. You call it exhaustion, you call it burnout. But underneath, it's not about how much you're doing. It's about how little of it still matters to you. This is the paradox. What feels like rest can be the early stages of emotional shutdown. A kind of flatline that looks calm but is actually decay in slow motion. Stagnation doesn't keep you safe. It keeps you small. It convinces you that numb is better than risk. That familiar pain is easier than unfamiliar power. But pain is pain. And over time, even numbness becomes heavy. You weren't built to live in permanent stillness. You were built to respond, to explore, to rise. And when you stop answering that inner pull, the system dims. Not out of weakness, but out of neglect. Safety is not the absence of motion. Real safety is being alive in your body, moving toward what calls you, not away from what once hurt you. Homeostasis, the silent killer of growth. In biology, homeostasis is balance, the body's effort to maintain equilibrium. But what keeps your body alive can quietly kill your evolution. Because when applied to your psychology, homeostasis becomes a slow death, a comfort zone dressed up as wellness, a rhythm so still it robs you of motion. Your nervous system doesn't just tolerate challenge, it needs it, just like your muscles. Without resistance, they weaken. Without tension, they shrink. Your emotional resilience works the same way. If you stop exposing yourself to friction, to edges, to stakes, your capacity for change atrophies. And that atrophy, it doesn't arrive with a warning. It shows up in the fog, in your inability to get excited, in how easily you get thrown off course, in the way you lose clarity, not because life is hard, but because you stopped evolving. We think peace is the absence of discomfort, but the absence of discomfort can also mean the absence of growth, the absence of engagement, the absence of challenge. What we call peace might just be a nervous system that's gone numb, a body that forgot how to stretch, a soul that stopped asking questions. You don't need chaos to grow, but you need tension. You need micro-stress. You need the kind of discomfort that pushes your edges without breaking your core. Because balance, without motion, isn't equilibrium. It's erosion. And you deserve more than that. You deserve to feel yourself getting stronger, sharper, braver, even when, especially when, it's uncomfortable. The false middle, why neutral doesn't exist. There is no pause button in human behaviour. You're not standing still. You're either rising or retreating, growing into the future version of yourself, or unconsciously collapsing back into your past patterns. But we love the myth of neutrality, the idea that we can delay our evolution, that we can wait and see without consequence, that by not choosing, we avoid risk. But here's the truth, not choosing is still a choice, and every choice has a direction, even silence, even stillness, even maybe later. Every day, every moment, you cast a vote for who you are becoming, or for who you are staying. And if you're not consciously choosing to rise, then you're being pulled, slowly, gently, into the repetition of who you've already been. We don't call it falling, we call it managing, we call it being realistic, we call it doing what we have to do. But underneath the surface, those quiet concessions pile up. You stop questioning, you stop stretching, you start letting old habits lead, not because they work, but because they're known, safe, predictable. Neutrality is the costume stagnation wears when it wants to blend in, but there is no middle ground in a living system. There's growth, or there's regression, there's motion, or there's drift. The middle, it's a myth, a limbo with gravity. And unless you disrupt it, unless you name it, it will become your autopilot. And autopilot, no matter how smooth the ride, never takes you anywhere new. The 3-stage drift model. People don't wake up lost. They drift there, slowly, quietly, one soft denial at a time. It starts with comfort. You tell yourself, I've earned the right to slow down. And maybe you have, but rest becomes routine. Stretching becomes optional. The edge becomes blurry. Then comes the drift. It's subtle. You stop feeling like yourself, but you can't explain why. You still get things done, you still show up, but something is off. You don't laugh the same. You don't light up the same. You feel like a version of yourself, in low resolution, and then collapse. It's not loud. It's not cinematic. It's just a quiet moment of recognition. I don't know who I've become. This model isn't theory. It's reality for people who confuse consistency with meaning, who confuse peace with absence, who confuse slowing down with giving. Upped awareness is important, but it's not enough. Drift doesn't stop just because you see it. It stops when you create intentional friction, when you make deliberate choices that disrupt the pattern. If you don't create that friction, life will, through crisis, through loss, through discomfort that demands change, because motion always returns. The only question is, will you choose it, or wait until it chooses you? Stability isn't security. It's often just the first step in forgetting, and forgetting who you are is the most dangerous kind of drift there is. Real case, the executive who had it all but felt numb. He checked every box, the title, the salary, the structure. His life was a model of control, scheduled to the minute, optimized for success. On paper, he was thriving. In his body, he was flatlining. He didn't feel stress. He felt nothing. He called it stability. He told himself he had matured, outgrown the fire, settled into rhythm. But his body told a different story. Insomnia, tension, waves of anxiety he couldn't name. And then one day it stopped pretending. His system collapsed. Not dramatically, quietly. A shutdown masked as exhaustion. Doctors couldn't explain it. Nothing was wrong, and yet nothing was working. That's when he realized, numbness isn't peace, it's emotional compression. And like anything compressed too long, it breaks. Not in noise, but in the silence you can't escape. He didn't need a sabbatical. He didn't need a new role. He needed movement, not the frantic kind, the intentional kind, the kind that reintroduces feeling, that reminds the nervous system it's still alive. Today, he still runs the same company, but his mornings start differently. Less screen, more stillness. He walks without a podcast. He speaks with his team like people, not projects. He risks softness. He tolerates uncertainty. He chooses friction, on purpose. Because now he understands. Structure without. Motion isn't strength, it's stagnation. And life isn't meant to be managed. It's meant to be felt and lived, even when it's messy. Especially then. Picture a mountain. You're standing on a narrow slope, one foot slightly ahead of the other. The ground is angled, subtle but constant. There's no ledge, no cliff, just an incline that doesn't care how tired you are. Here's the truth of that terrain. If you're not climbing, you're sliding. Even standing still isn't real. Gravity always pulls, and the moment you stop moving with intention, the descent begins, not as a fall, but as a drift. Slow, unfelt. Until one day, you look around and realize you're far from where you started, and even farther from where you meant to go. That's what life is. There's no true plateau, no pause. Just forward or backward, just progress or erosion. We glamorize the climb, the bold leaps, the breakthroughs. But the climb isn't always loud. Sometimes it's one steady breath, one decision not to numb, one conversation you don't avoid, one page written, one pattern interrupted. Climbing hurts, but sliding costs, and the longer you delay your steps, the steeper the recovery. Because what slides easily doesn't return as easily. Not just time lost, but strength, belief, direction. You don't need speed. You don't need to summit tomorrow. You just need to lean forward, just enough to break the slide. Because the slope is real, but so is your will. And motion, no matter how small, is what keeps you alive on that mountain. Stability sounds noble. It feels earned. It gives you language to defend your pause, to explain your stillness. But comfort, for too long, is not clarity. It's camouflage, because real life doesn't freeze. Not for your fear, not for your planning, not even for your healing. It moves, and if you're not in motion with it, you're not safe. You're slowly disappearing from your own aliveness. You don't need to sprint. You don't need to chase. You just need to rise. One breath, one question, one movement at a time. Not because someone told you to, but because your soul is whispering louder now, this isn't who I came here to be. So ask yourself, without flinching, where am I calling it stability? When what I'm really living is stagnation, and if something in you answered, even quietly, then don't let that signal fade. Don't scroll past it. Don't package it as motivation and store it for later. Subscribe, not to this channel, but to that signal, that inner ache for motion, for tension, for truth, for becoming. Ms. Time Distorter, signing off. See you in motion.